In this video, we're going to be covering the first part of the application. And let's go ahead and go there by going to the Property Management menu and clicking. What we're basically looking for is we want to go to the Property Owner Management screen. So let's start there. In this video tutorial, I'm going to be covering the main screen or the body area of this screen in part 1. There's going to be a second part where I'm going to cover the individual popover screens on this side to explain how they function. Let's start out by looking at one of the areas at the top of the screen. Recall that we did use this popover with all the menu options that are on it, so you can see each one of the screens in the application. I want to point out that some of these screens that you see over here are actually the same screens that are over here. These are child screens, and this is the main or parent screen for the application for the property management. Now, what is the property management screen? The first screen in this application is going to describe the property, the city where the property's at, the state or international area where it's at. In this case, this is Dubai, UAE. It could be any place in the UK or Europe or even in the United States. So you want to put the information in there. And for the purposes of a cross street, what that does is it narrows down the location where the actual property is at by the cross street. The next is the square foot or square meters, which is used in the financials and other information in the application. So what you would have there is this information for the actual square meters or square feet. And if you have something else, I don't think we would go to Japan and see square inches, but that's possible. The unit or number on the apartment, in this case, if it's an apartment or it's an address, it can be a unit like the address, in this case is 3410. And in this case, we're depicting this as on the 34th floor, and the actual luxury apartment is 3410. The country or town, in this case, you could put it, if you're in the UK or Europe, you may have a country or town that's a subordinate to the actual city. Then there's a zip or postal ID. And in some cases, I know in some countries, they do not have a postal ID, and there's a way around that we're going to be showing you. Then you have the type of a dwelling. In this case, it says it's a luxury apartment, and the dwelling age is 16 years. This little field up here will be explained more in detail how it works with this area below. But let's talk about the property description. The property description is an area where, in this case, I put some information about the application, but this would be additional information about the particular property that you're going to be managing, or if it's your own, you're going to be using it as the information to control what goes on with your property. Now, on this area over here, what I'm going to point out is this is the property address select. If you had, now I have 2 properties in here only. As you build more properties in here, you can very quickly look at this and scroll it and then click on the property, and what it would do is it would change screens to show you the other property that's in there or the one you select. Now, the next thing I want to show you on this screen, and this is kind of unique in this application, the 3.0 version did not have this, and what it basically does is it allows you to see all of the tenants on your complete application and the history of each one of them. In addition, what it does is if you have a address, in this particular case where there's a, like this is in the El Masa Towers, and there's a tenant in there in this particular record, and it was in the 3410. But you'll notice that this is the date that they occupied it in 2014, and they left in August of 2015. And then the flat or the luxury apartment was then reassigned and released to Larry Minor, and now he's from 11/9 of 15 to November 9 of 2016. So there is a easy to identify period of time for, and it shows a 1 year. Now this can be edited any way you want to in the actual record, and by showing the actual record, what it does is it provides you with the ability to see the details of the information that's in this row. For example, let's go to the top row. This is a single family home, and this one I'm just showing that it's in another place, and if you go to the record in the tenant record, you're going to see the details for that. Now, these records in the rows in here were created in the tenant screen, and they're only viewed here. So if you try to click on these, you're going to see you're not going to be able to edit these. And if you can edit them, they're calculations, so they're not going to be allowing you to edit them. So it'll give you an error message that you can't change them from this screen since they're calculated. Now, what happens in this screen, and part of what this has done, it's similar to looking up information that you need to know about on an ongoing basis. If I use the scroll bar and I look down and the color code shows the sum of a balance and it's in red, that means there's an outstanding balance in that particular person's record. And you can, when you go into the actual record, you'll see when it was actually due for that tenant, when it was due, and in red means that it's past the due date. And that's not appropriate because you want them to pay on time. So anything that's flagged in a red here, where this one is not flagged, but there's no record of any yet, the guy just started with his occupancy, so there's no interesting information as far as what they paid so far. Now, obviously, you can add a deposit and stuff like that in there because this was just leased. This is actually being produced in November of 2015, and this is 1 day old, so it has not got any new information as far as this particular tenant is concerned. Now, on this up here, this is the termination or lease termination date. The lease termination date, since it's not effective yet, it has not terminated, would be in white. If the termination date has been reached, that means anything in blue means that this is an old occupant, and the new occupant should have a new person coming into that dwelling anytime after this termination is done, or a new lease contract or rental contract is being written, and it should have a new record added to show that this is a new lease. So you would have a new one with a new start date and a new ending date. But anything in blue indicates that that is a terminated lease or rental. Now, how does this work? If I come up here and I clicked on this particular box up here, it'll drop down. It'll allow me to add a new global date for all these fields in here. And what it'll do is it'll update any of these fields that are set here to the current date, which I pick on this drop down, that will now provide the termination date if it is due. Now, on this portal, it'll scroll so you can have an infinite number of records in here. One of the things this does, and the purpose of it is to look at your application as far as the total billed on all the records that are in the records, and this gives you an accumulated value of all the income in this case that was billed and paid, and then any of the balance dues that are still in there. And this is like a global grand total, and these, when you go into the actual records, will show you the individual records of what's been paid on an ongoing basis and what the sum totals are in that record. Now, if I pop over, which I'll show you later, into the list view, it'll show you a list view of all the current tenants and the ones that have terminated their leases, very similar to this. Now, if I wanted to go to the actual record for the tenant, I would go here and the list view here. Now, this pretty well covers the basic information on the screen with the exception of a map, which is up above, and I'm going to point out what this does. The information that you put into this screen will go to the Google Maps, and it'll automatically go to the particular residence that you have here. So let's try to do that. We'll click on it, and we'll wait for a second for it to find the location, and you'll see that what it has done is it's found the Alamos Tower in this case in the UAE. This is to show you that you can do an international application. There is a version of this application 3.5 that is the international version, and it can have any of the money symbols for any of the locations that this application is being used in. Now, if I want to clear the screen, I can clear this, and it'll also clear the address. But if I wanted to, I could have clicked on that particular location, and in this case, if I wanted to, I could drag the little guy out here and put the round circle right there and drop him. And what it'll do is that if there's a video or a still picture or what Google has put in there as far as a location in the map, it will provide me with the option to go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to drop it right on the Dubai Synergy right there to see if it brings anything up. Well, in this case it doesn't have anything, but if I go to the streets that are highlighted and I drop it there, it will provide an image of the location, and I can do a panoramic look to see where that particular building was, where this residence was at, and the tower that it's in. So if you have any questions about how to use the basic part of this screen, you can go ahead and go to our support website and ask questions or get support. Thank you.